Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Prashant. Prashant, we'll get started off because
Sir,
I want to finish off Aquinas today. Um, and at 11, I have some work to be done for the department. It's very urgent. So, apart from the fact that I have work to do, I'm also sure that you have another class at 11, I think. So, let's get started and finish off with St. Thomas Aquinas. Um, and I have not been keeping well, Prashant. I've been getting this rotary vertigo, so my doctor has advised me to take rest for a couple of days. And fortunately, these holidays have come. So we will not have classes during the holidays as I thought we will. Okay.
yes,
Um,
sir.
I'm sorry about that. Mm,
No,
But
sir. You take rest, sir. We can cover our syllabus at any time, sir.
yeah. Or tomorrow I'll contact you if I'm feeling a bit better and ask you if day after tomorrow is all right. But I definitely like to take one day off. Okay. Right. So let me just go back because I told you that I'll talk about the punishments that were meted out uh, to various people who refused to subscribe to the beliefs of Christianity and to the uh, revealed knowledge that is there in the Bible. If people questioned those kind of knowledge, uh, then people were uh, uh, basically people were what should I say? They were accused of being anti-God, and the punishments that were meted out to them were terrible. So there is this book by Michel Foucault. Foucault, you can see, is the last point. Michel. Michel, uh, that's Michael in French, is Mikhail in German. But let's not get into that. Michel Foucault, in his book Discipline and Punish, okay, he talks of this thing. There is one chapter in it which is called the spectacle of the scaffold. Okay. Uh, Foucault's contention is that it is the practice of human beings from the medieval period of European history to punish people in public, and by doing so create fear among others. So punishment was used as a deterrence against questioning of authority. And he doesn't only talk about the medieval period, he also talks about various other periods. So, but this particular chapter, which is called The Spectacle of the Scaffold, is about how the Christians used punishment as a deterrence. Okay, anybody who challenged the authority of the church uh, was automatically considered to be a heretic. Heretic. Okay, heretic. A heretic is one who does not believe in God. It doesn't stop there. It says they believe in the devil or Satan or Lucifer. Okay, these are the three names given to Lucifer. That is his actual name. Satan is, like I told you yesterday, from shaitan in Farsi and Arabic to Urdu. It is also there in that. So that became Satan. And you will also see this other word, the devil. Okay. And devil worshippers even today exist in the world. One doesn't know if the devil exists, but devil worshippers certainly do exist. You might be surprised that I know a few of them. Okay, they have their own rituals of devil worship. Anyway, so what is the spectacle of the scaffold? See, a scaffolding is always something that is constructed with wooden pillars, okay, or wooden beams. When you see construction happening, you'll find all these wooden things. Those are when you put it in the front, it is called a scaffold. So the spectacle of the scaffold began with burning people at stake, stake. The stake is a stick which was put firmly in the ground. Then more sticks were arranged around it to create a funeral pyre, Pyre. Okay, pyre is fire, basically. A funeral pyre. And the person who had been adjudged a heretic by the church would be burnt alive. That person would be tied to that pole, the wooden pole that they put in the middle, and the funeral pyre that they create. In that person would be made to burn alive. And while the person was actually burning, these people would, these people meaning the people of the church, would say, confess now that you are under the influence of the devil. Confess now that you are under the influence of the devil. They'd go on repeating this. And most of these people hoping that they will put the fire out. If he says, I am under the influence of the devil, used to agree. They used to agree and say, yes, I am under the influence of the devil. Yes, I am under the influence of the devil. And in a few instances, these people would then be let off if they were not seen as too much of a threat to Christian society. But many of them would be burnt. Despite their saying, I am under the influence of the devil, that becomes the reason to burn them. Okay. So you have this one form, which is the spectacle, one form of the spectacle of the scaffold. There was yet another uh, barbaric practice that was practiced by, that was used by the church. People would be tied to 4 horses, their 4 limbs, their 2 legs and their 2 hands, all stretched out, would be tied to 4 different horses. Okay, so 1 horse per limb. And then the horses would be whipped so that they start running. Now, 4 horses are trying to run in 4 different directions. And that is the spectacle of the scaffold again. The poor fellow who has been tied up, he again would be asked, are you under the influence of the devil? And hoping that he will be spared of his life, he would say, yes, I am under the influence of the devil. Sometimes again, a pardon was granted, but they were isolated. And they also uh, basically, you will see that these people would be torn apart by the horses. Just imagine what a horrible death that is. It's a very, very horrible death. Okay, so they'd be torn apart. Literally, the body would be torn apart. So that is the spectacle of the scaffold. And this was to scare people. Now, if you look at the Bible, though it says that it is the wisdom of God, it isn't anything like that. There is no wisdom of God in the Bible. The astronomy that the Bible follows is actually that of the Egyptian astronomer of the BCE period, whose name was Ptolemy, Ptolemy. Please do not confuse this Ptolemy with Ptolemy the 16th, who is also a pharaoh of Egypt. That is a different person. Ptolemy the astronomer is a different person. Now, Ptolemy believed that the earth was the center of the universe. He believed that it was flat. He believed that the sun was going around it. You know the theory, which is now famously called the geocentric theory of the universe. Geocentric basically refers to the earth. Geo in Greek, Geo, not Jio. Okay, Geo essentially means the earth. So the geocentric theory was propagated by the Bible. And you will be surprised to know that even today, the Bible says that it is the earth which is the center of the universe. Till today, the Bible says that. Okay. And when much later, Galileo, who invented the telescope, when Galileo pointed out that Earth was neither flat nor was it the center of the universe, that it was something that was rotating on its own axis, creating day and night, and going around the sun, revolving around the sun, creating seasons. Immediately, Galileo was called a heretic, and after calling him a heretic, they decided to give him the punishment of burning at stake. So Galileo realized that there was no way he was going to win this argument. So even before that stake was put in place, he apologized to the church. He said, I was under the control of the devil, and I have now come out of the control of the devil. I was wrong. I am extremely sorry that I put out this wrong knowledge and challenged what was written in the Bible. And then his life was spared. But Galileo had to be isolated because people thought if he was once under the influence of the devil, then he can go back under the influence of the devil again. So he should not come in touch with people. So he was isolated from society. And in the 20th century, some rationalists among the Christians said that the church should apologize to Galileo, but the church till date has not apologized either to Galileo or the two famous mathematicians who also talked about the heliocentric. Sun in Greek is helios, Helios. So the sun-centric universe or the heliocentric universe, that theory was also propounded by mathematicians Copernicus and Kepler. And these two people were also threatened. And so somebody said that it is time that the church apologized to these people. But the church till date has not apologized to these people. Okay, saying that we were wrong, you were right. They don't want to say that. So that is the reason why one would say that the church still believes in faith and not in reason. Okay, reason or rationality. Rationality can also be called reason as such. Okay, and if you go into the Spanish Inquisition, those people who left the Roman Church and became Protestants, they were punished in horrible ways. Okay, machines were made, not machines as self-operating machines, but different kinds of things that people only used to handle, by which you would inflict terrible pain on Protestants. So this was called the Spanish Inquisition, Inquisition, Spanish Inquisition. And one of the inquisitors, the inquisitor is the head of the Inquisition. His name was Torquemada, and Torquemada, or actually Torquemada, I think, I'm not very sure of the pronunciation. So Torquemada was supposed to be particularly cruel. One of his inventions was creating something erect like this, but it would fold in half in this direction or in this direction. Okay, so a man was tied to this two poles which are articulated in the middle, and they would first bend him forward and say, will you renounce Protestantism and accept the authority of the Roman Church, of the Vatican? And if the person still disagreed, then it would be done the other way, which means your back will break because you're going to be going back like this. So Christian punishments were extremely cruel if you did not subscribe to their doctrine. They were very, very cruel. Okay. So that is the spectacle of the scaffold. And all these were done in public in order to instill fear among people, and through fear, draw compliance. To draw compliance. Okay, and today we believe that the democracy model that came to us is actually a great form of government, but it isn't. A democracy is a completely non-representative system. I'll talk about this when I talk about Rousseau. Okay, it's a completely non-representative system. I mean, just take, for example, there is a constituency of 100 people, of which 51 have voted for one candidate, A, and 49 have voted for another candidate, B. So what does that mean? It means that these people, all the 100 people, are represented by candidate A, even though half the constituency has voted against him. So where is representation? Okay, this is just to show the problems that are there in the idea of representation itself. But if you go into the actual practice, then you'll see that the mandate that people give to certain candidates and political parties are those which have nothing to do with the people later on. The candidate becomes autonomous. So all these forms of governance that we have till today, they are based in the cunning. Okay. Hegel uses a very interesting expression called the cunning of reason, but he uses it in a different context. Okay. He says that we think we are understanding something as it is happening. Okay, as the event is unfolding in front of you, you're seeing and you're understanding it. But he says in reality, that is not how it is. The event has already occurred, but you think you're witnessing the event. It is an illusory perception that is there in your mind. And this illusory perception, he says, is caused by the cunning of reason. Okay, so most of the things that have come out of Western civilization, not in the Hegelian sense, but they have the cunning of the reason. St. Thomas Aquinas, and if we go to his system of laws, for example, he was shrewd and cunning. Okay, and he used cunning as a way of, deceiving people into accepting what was being till then questioned. Sorry about that. Extremely sorry. Yeah. Now, he took recourse to this cunning, to this subterfuge that we can see in his system of law or laws, like I told you yesterday. You can call it either of the two things. Okay. He was right when he said when people will live in peace when there is no conflict, and there will be no conflict because of the fact that there is a system of law. Okay, there is a system of law. So if there is a system of law, this will ensure that people live their lives lawfully. And if they break the law, then you will basically uh, receive a punishment for that. So you say theft is breaking the law, or even as simple as running a red light. Okay, that is also breaking of the law, and therefore you're given a challan or whatever. So you see, what happens is that this whole idea of living lawfully is something that came from the Greeks. But the Greeks sourced their law in rationality, as did the Romans. Whether that all forms of rationality are not the same, there are different forms of rationality. In fact, if you look at the whole of Roman jurisprudence, what you find is that Roman jurisprudence believes that there should be separate laws for the Romans, who are conquerors, and separate laws for people whom they have conquered, because those they have conquered are inferior to them. Okay, so most of the jurisprudence that you see in Cicero, Seneca, in the Roman period, you will find that these are all based in the idea that the Romans are superior to those whom they conquered. So that is not equitable law. It doesn't have equality of people. But in modern constitutions, which are the source of the law, we tend to believe that law is something that is equitable, and you must have done the principle of rule of law. And when you say there is a rule of law, then you say the law is applicable to every person in a country without consideration of that person's social status or any other such encumbrances. So the same law is applicable to a beggar and to the president of the country. I'm talking about India. Okay. So that is supposed to be the rule of law. Law is supreme. And therefore, when you did monism in your sovereignty, you would have seen John Austin, basically saying that sovereignty lies with the law. Okay. And today we believe that constitutions are the source of law, and constitutions themselves are seen as social contract mechanisms. Like take our preamble, take the preamble of the American Constitution. They begin with "we the people of India," or in their case, America, have solemnly resolved. So it is supposed to be the decision of the people to have this as the contract. Okay, and that becomes the constitution. The Indian constitution went through the Constituent Assembly. I'm sure you did that while you were in your second year. Okay, it went through the assembly. I'm sorry, the Constituent Assembly, which is also, by the way, considered the first ever legislature of the country. And the document that it made was circulated all over the country, not among all people, but among the educated people, well-known people. And 7,000 odd amendments were suggested, of which 700 plus were accepted and incorporated as amendments. Now you see that in the Indian Constitution, apart from the fact that it is a constitution that is applicable to the whole country, there are sections that are called personal law. You have the Muslim personal law, you have the Sikh personal law, SIKH, Sikh personal law, and you have the Christian personal law and the Hindu personal law. These are those laws which are applicable when there is a problem or a dispute within that particular community. Okay, if there is a dispute among Muslims, then the Muslim personal law will become applicable. If there is a dispute among Christians, then their personal law becomes applicable. Okay, so these are specific instances. But the Americans said, no, we don't believe in that. We believe in one uniform civil code. Now, even the BJP has been saying for many years that India also should move to uniform civil code. Why are people objecting to this? People are objecting to this because they want to understand what is going to be the source of the uniform civil code. In America, in Europe, where everybody says there is a uniform civil code, it is drawn out of Christianity. Okay, and that is why in the 20th century, in Canada and in America, there is this movement called multiculturalism. For many years, the Americans claimed that America was a melting pot of cultures. That once you went to America, you became an American. It was a melting pot of cultures. But is it? It is not. If it is, why are Indians called Indian Americans? Why don't you call them Americans? Okay. Why are the black people called African Americans? The Irish people live in localities that are away from the Anglo-Saxon British, because the British looked down on the Irish as drunkards and fools. So you have Irish townships. You have German townships where groups of Germans live. And if you go to California, if you go to two places, Fremont or Fremont as they call it, Fremont, and Sunnyvale, 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 you find nobody but Indians there. Okay, one of my uncles went to Fremont to visit his daughter, and he came back disgusted. When he came back, I asked him, so how was your trip to America? And he said, I'm disgusted. And I said, why are you disgusted? He said, I'm disgusted because I met 7 friends of yours while I was in Fremont in a supermarket. I met 7 friends of yours. It was like I was in India. I didn't think I was in America at all. So that is how it is. So where is the melting pot? So people have started talking about multiculturalism. Why should people follow a civil code that is based in Christianity? Even in India, despite the fact that we have these personal laws, the fact that we have Sunday as a holiday, second Saturday as a holiday, and these days in the corporates, 5 day a week, all these things indicate that we are still under the influence of a code of law that has been created in accordance with principles of Christianity. Okay. And you should understand that more than 80% of the Indian Constitution is the Government of India Act of 1935. And in the debates of the Constituent Assembly, I think it was J.B. Kripalani who objected to the use of the word sovereign in the preamble. He said, what kind of sovereignty do we have? We are using a constitution written for us by the British. That is what he said. He said we shouldn't be calling ourselves sovereign. And we decided to remain in the Commonwealth, so he took objection to that as well. But that's a different issue. I digress. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you have to understand law, please remember that every law has some source. And the source is always an ethical source. And unlike morality, which I told you is transcendental, ethics change from time to time and from place to place. Okay, so this is where you see how cunning Aquinas is when you look at his categorization of law. He categorized law into 4 categories. One he called eternal law. So let's go one by one. Let's not go all at one. Okay, and I told you that this he did because despite the punishments being meted out to people, people were tired of the control of the church on them. They were tired of the church constantly telling them that you cannot use your rationality because rationality is the weapon of the devil. And by making you believe that you can understand the world through your rationality, the devil is drawing you to hell and away from God. That is what people were told. And I also told you the Middle Ages or the medieval period is called the Dark Ages because nothing happened at that particular time. People were not allowed to think. So there was automaton conformity. You were told to do something, you will do it without question. That is, by the way, the motto of the military. Every military in the world has this motto: no questions, only orders. Okay, that is the motto of every military. When I was an NCC cadet, I actually wanted to go into the Navy. I was sick when I had gone for an NCC camp, and I was sleeping. I had reported sick. Somebody came, and then they found that somebody swept in the barrack in which we were sleeping. That was another squad, and they had put a little bit of what they swept in a corner. So this man comes, he kicks me because I was lying on the floor, and he says, "Who put that there?" I said, "I don't know. My squad is here. That is the other side. I don't know." And did, he put his fingers like this. Pat! He hit me here. How dare you back answer? Clean it. So I went to the camp commandant and complained. And I said, this man, even though it is called sick parade in NCC terminology. Even though I was on a sick parade, he wakes me up by kicking me and then hits me for no fault of mine. And the commandant told me, "Son," this is what he actually said, "this is how the military functions. You have to learn that. You really have to learn that." And that is the day I decided I will never have anything to do with the military. I gave up the idea of joining the Navy. Otherwise, that was one of my burning desires when I was very young. Okay. So that is the reason why I told you that this thing is that people were not allowed to question. It was a regimented society where without questioning, you had to follow the orders of the church. So there was a simmering discontent. And like I told you yesterday, Aquinas saw this as possibly turning into a rebellion against Christianity, which he didn't want. So what he did is he took recourse to the cunning of reason, not in the Hegelian sense, but he used reason or rationality cunningly. He said, human beings are rational, unlike other animals. And since human beings are rational, human beings are capable of understanding the wisdom of God through their rationality. Okay, so he said, if you need to understand the wisdom of God, you need rationality. And after that, he categorized law into four. The first one he called eternal law. Eternal is that which lasts forever. The opposite of ephemeral. Ephemeral is something which is like a flash in the pan. It is here now, gone. Whereas eternal is unchanging and everlasting. So the first law that he's talking about is eternal law. So what is the source of the eternal law? He says God created the universe, and therefore the universe functions according to this eternal law, which is nothing but the wisdom of God. Eternal law is sourced from the wisdom of God. Then you will obviously ask, where do I find this eternal law? Okay, there is eternal law, but where is it? If today I say, where is a law? Then you'll say, I'll consult the constitution or whatever, and you'll tell me, here, this is the law. But if you say eternal law, where is it? So he said, eternal law is invisible, but you can find its operation in the laws of nature, which he called natural law. Okay, please distinguish between natural rights and natural law. Natural rights is a different vocabulary altogether. Okay, so he said, you find the operationalizing of eternal law in the way in which nature functions. So, natural law is the manifestation or the appearance of the eternal law. So, if you observe nature, then you know what is eternal law, because the laws of nature are as per the eternal law. Then he goes to the third category. Some people call it human law. Some people call it social law. My preference is for social law, but you can use either or both. Ideally, do what I did there. Put human/social law. The source of all social laws, or all social law, if you want, according to Aquinas, is to be found in natural law. If you understand natural law, you will also understand why there is a social law, how that social law has come into being. Okay, so the church is that which has brought that natural law into operation in order to create social laws. So social laws are ultimately linked to eternal law. It is like the associations, that natural associations that Aristotle talked about. The first level is the family, a natural association. The family, the different families come together and create the second level of association, which is the village. That is also a natural association. The third is the polis, P-O-L-I-S, because that is where villages come together. So the polis is that association, which is the culmination of human rationality, according to Aristotle. Here, of course, social law is the understanding of the wisdom of God. St. Thomas Aquinas very famously said, belief in the Lord, with a capital L, Lord can either be Jesus Christ or it can be God. Belief in the law is the belief in God is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. That is what he said. So social laws are those which reflect eternal law, which is the wisdom of God. But then he takes recourse to cunning again. He says there are sometimes some things that we do not understand. Despite the fact that we are rational, our rationality still is inferior to God's rationality. So we mightn't always understand whatever God's rationality is. So he said, the fourth law is divine law. So what is divine law? Divine law is that which is revealed by God through the medium of a prophet. So we are back to where we began. Okay, divine law is the revelation of God's wisdom through the medium of a prophet. So whenever people are unable to understand social laws which are based in the wisdom of God indirectly, then God directly sends a Messiah or a prophet and enlightens people. Okay, so this is that subterfuge, the cunning that you find in Aquinas, because at one level it seems that he is talking about how rationality is important, but ultimately, where is he coming? He's coming back to the idea of divine knowledge, which is wisdom of God and therefore should be followed. Very often, Thomism, the philosophy of Aquinas, and Aquinas himself is called a Christianized Aristotle. I had said this in the beginning. Why is he saying that? Why do people say that Aquinas is a Christianized Aristotle? I told you that despite being Plato's student, Aristotle disagreed with almost everything that Plato said, except for a few things. Plato believed in the innateness of knowledge. I hope you remember that. We are born with knowledge. Our mind is not empty. Okay, it already has knowledge in it. And it is the ability of your mind to recollect what it learned in its different births and in the realm of souls that distinguishes the wise from the not so wise. The ability to recollect that knowledge. So all knowledge for him is innate, inborn. It's there right from birth. Aristotle disagreed with it. He said, knowledge is not innate, but it is gained from the senses. Okay, the senses are your touch, smell, sight, taste, all these. These senses, this is used much later in John Locke also, in his seminal essay, which is called An Essay Concerning Human Understanding. We'll talk about that when we come to Locke. I want to finish this today. So he says there are inputs that are going into a person. He doesn't say mind, he says it goes into people. And the mind logically inferences from self-evident truths. Okay, logically inferences what that is from self-evident truths. Because please remember, Aristotle is a teleological thinker, which means it's not up to us to create knowledges. It is not up to us to create a truth. For him, you have been given the power of logic. I told you in his work, Prior and Posterior Analytics, that's where he talks about logic. He says human beings use their logic on the inputs that have come from the senses, and from that we find self-evident truths. This particular principle is used by St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas Aquinas claims that eternal law is a self-evident truth, and our rationality and logic are there to aid us in understanding the self-evident truths, that which don't have to be proved. That's why Aristotle is not mathematical, he's not geometrical like Plato. Okay, that will demand proof. If you take the Pythagorean theorem, it demands proof. But Aristotle is not saying you need to prove. You only understand logically, you infer logically the self-evident truth of a proposition. That is the principle that has been used by Aquinas in order to make people believe that social law is in accordance with eternal law, which is the wisdom of God, and therefore it is self-evident. Your rationality, your logical thinking are only there for you to understand the self-evident truths, which don't have to be proved. Okay, but he also added that divine revelation to the self-evident truths. Okay, that is where he differs from Aristotle. Aristotle does not believe in any revelation. Okay, it's just rational, logical thinking, no revelation. So that is where there is a little bit of a difference between the two. Now, the second reason why he's called a Christianized Aristotle is because of Aristotle's doctrine of analogies being accepted by St. Thomas Aquinas. What is the doctrine of analogy? And some people say analogy, some people say analogy. I say analogy. You know what is an analogy? Similarity. Okay. You are, if I say to Prashant, please don't take offense. If I say something like Prashant is behaving like a small boy who's been left in a toy store. If I say that, that is an analogy. He's not a small boy, right? But I'm saying he's behaving like that. That is an analogy, a similarity, some kind of a similarity. You are trying to explain how his behavior by taking recourse to an example which is analogous with the thing that Prashant is doing, right? So he says statements about God are true analogically rather than univocally. Okay, univocally is unequivocally also, which is, it's not unequivocal as in you cannot challenge it, but you can draw logical inferences of the analogical variety in order to prove the existence of God. And Aristotle, I told you, believed in the cause-effect chain, and therefore he required a pure cause, the first cause, the cause of all causes, which is God. And he says that God can be understood through the various analogical situations which come in our life. So that is how he says God's existence can be proven. Let me just give you an example, quick example. When I applied in Osmania University, people told me, you're an ass. Why did you go and apply there? You will not get a job. I said, why? They said, Usmania is only for Usmanians. You didn't study in Usmania. So where will you get this job? There are so many people in the waiting list in Usmania itself. Where will you get this job? But I got this job. How I got it is another story. It is a completely different story, how I got this. But I believe that it is an act of God that I got a job in Osmania University when even I started believing that I will not get this job. I did the interview and forgot all about it. I forgot all about it. And when I received the orders, I couldn't believe it. Okay, that is an analogical understanding of God. Okay, so if people ask me why I believe in God, this is why I believe in God. Another quick example. My father was in hospital. He was pretty ill a few years ago. And I had a back problem. I was bedridden. And somebody who wanted to meet me, a girl who wanted some clarifications from me, I told her today I'll try to go to the hospital. So I'll be outside the ICU. If I am late, my mother will be there. She looks like this. Please meet her and sit with her. I'll come and join you. I couldn't go. I couldn't go to the hospital because my back was in a very, very bad state. My poor mother was sitting there alone. This girl had never seen me. She waited and they called and I said, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that I'm not in a position to come. She said, no, no, no problem. And then she asked my mother some questions about how she's managing and all. Then she went and fought with the hospital people and made them give her a room. So that because in the ICU, people are not allowed. So she fought for her for a room. Every day she took lunch for her. A person who didn't know me, who had never seen me. I had never seen her. Why did this person come suddenly and help my mother at a time when my mother required help and when I was not able to give it? That is another act of God. These are the analogies that Aristotle is talking about. And Aquinas says exactly the same thing. Don't try to say that God exists univocally. Univocally is in one word. Don't say God exists. Look at life's experiences, the analogies, and then you'll understand the existence of God. Now, Aquinas was only partially successful in his goal because of his bringing divine law again and saying logic and all these things are subject to God again. So his failures led to discontent among later Christian thinkers. Christian thinkers who were these people, Marsilius, it's also written Marsilio in Italian. He was of Padua. We'll talk about Padua another day. And William of Ockham. You can write either of the spellings. OCCAM is actually the original spelling used by the British. Okay, but in Italian, CC becomes Ch. It'll become William of Ocham. So that's why the Italians changed the spelling to OCKAM. So that you say Ockham and not Ocham. Okay, so it is William of Ockham. These two people said, you must have a separation of the state, not the state, they called it the imperium, the imperium and the sacerdotium, they should be separated. The Pope and the Church should only concentrate upon matters pertaining to the sacerdotium, the realm of God. Whereas imperium, temporal matters, ephemeral matters, leave that to a king. That is what they said. And these people took a much braver stand, a more open stand, even though they were Franciscan friars. Franciscan friars are those who belong to the order of St. Francis. Okay, friars are brothers. We call Catholics brothers. So these two people basically argued for the separation of the sacerdotium from the imperium. So that is also called the church-state controversy, which I'll pick up when I meet you next. So today we are done with Aquinas. And please remember, I will give you either a call or send you a message about how I am. And if possible, we'll take a class day after tomorrow. But please leave me tomorrow. Okay. Thank you very much, Prashant. Sorry, I think I've delayed you again. See you then.
Thank you, sir. Sir, with this we have done with our 2 units.
Yes, we have done 2 units. The 3rd unit also can be done very quickly. No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay.